The large language models, in other words, generative AI, impacting every industry. And advancing healthcare with generative AI technologies is at the top of the agenda. Like other sectors going through the same phase, generative AI revolutionize medical claims processing by automating the medical coding process. For healthcare payors and insurers, generative AI acts as an invaluable agent assistant, providing call report summarization and performance analytics. To elevating diagnostic accuracy with AI enhanced imaging, generative AI has the potential to refine, reconstruct, or synthesize medical imagery, such as X rays, MRIs, or CT scans, providing physicians with more detailed and accurate visual data to support better informed diagnosis and treatment plans.
Welcome to the OTech Talks podcast, where it's all about working on technologies. You will hear the latest tech information, and your host, Kashif Manzoor, brings together product overviews, how-tos, best practices, tips and tricks, and troubleshooting techniques.
These are some of the use cases which are being discussed widely in the different sources that what generative AI can do. And we know as the healthcare industry stands on the brink of transformative era, with the integration of advanced technologies reshaping its landscape. Today we will talk about the dynamics of incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning models into healthcare systems. We explore the challenges and breakthroughs in developing go-to-market strategies, healthcare IT integrations, and the profound impact of AI in operational systems. In this insightful exploration, we will delve into the complexities of healthcare IT, focusing on implementing from coding systems of patients' records to the architecture of billing systems and the critical issues surrounding data entry. Cybersecurity is a crucial concern, especially given the high value of medical records in the black market. That's all gonna be discussed today because we have a wonderful guest speaker joining us for today's session. Today's session number is 124, and thank you so much for joining me over my podcast OpenTechTalks.tv. And it has enabled me to reach to this session number 124. Today's session is very important from a healthcare sector point of view. And we have a guest speaker who has spent an entire career in healthcare industry. Our today's speaker, let me invite and welcome James F. Jordan. He's a healthcare and life sciences expert. He is Distinguished Service Professor of Healthcare and Biotechnology at Carnegie Mellon University, Haynes College, the President of Staratactic, the National Co-Chairman of the Bio Bootcamp, and the founder of the Healthcare Data Center. He has published numerous articles and books on innovation, startups, intellectual property, and health systems. Jordan has been a senior executive for Fortune 100 companies and has participated in and led angel and venture capital investments. I'm very happy to welcome James to the OpenTechTalks.tv. Welcome to OpenTechTalks.tv. And today we have a guest speaker with us, James Jordan. And I will request James if he can introduce to the audience how they can remember that who is James. Who is Jim or James, whatever he preferred to call
So
it.
I go for James because I'm not the senator from Ohio.
Okay.
The congressman from Ohio. I'm at Carnegie Mellon University. And I get some pretty nasty emails periodically. So I prefer Jim as we talk, but I publish as James for that sole reason, basically. But I've got roughly 25 years in all aspects of healthcare. Started in the manufacturing side, medical devices, drugs, diagnostics, distribution, healthcare, information technology. And then I moved to the investment side and the academic side over the years. And so I looked at healthcare from multiple angles. And I have an academic website called healthcaredata.center where I publicly post all my reports as I do them. So it's available to people for free. And my whole purpose is to really improve the business of healthcare. And the business of healthcare today is a bunch of business models that don't sort of connect. And I think as we had talked earlier, the opportunity here is for technology to help alleviate some of those pain points.
Right. And I'm also considering myself lucky that in my initial career, I got a chance to work in healthcare and even later in my career. So I think I'm hoping that we will have a wonderful discussion.
Fantastic.
Okay. So you worked in both provider, regulator, or services, or how you
So
categorize it?
my business model today, I'm doing a venture capital fund, and now I'm a management consultant mostly and an educator. So I look at it from really solving business problems from people, which could be simply productivity, go to market strategy, market specifications. In the case these days, there's a lot of how do we integrate healthcare IT and take a lot of administrative burden off our physicians and our nurses, and that's a lot of the work that we've been doing today. And then on the physician side, it's that and the ability to help with the no paying system. For example, a few weeks ago, I was talking to a doctor who was in New Jersey, and he had 32 different insurance models that he had to be able to create documentation for. And, that just makes no sense, and it's very expensive to do. And it's a real challenge. So we have aspects of our healthcare system that are solvable with technology, and then we have some that maybe can make the chaos more efficient. 32 unique forms. Maybe automation can fill out those 32 unique forms, and he doesn't have to have the mental burden of sort of understanding patient A goes with insurance company B, and that gets very complex.
All right, so let me start with an example. My wife was talking to me a couple of weeks back that she went to doctor, and then she said, I was talking to doctor, and that the doctor was just keep typing in the computer, and she was not looking to me. She was not listening. And then after 15 minutes, she said, "Okay, thank you." And then typing is done, and then okay, you can get prescription outside. So, and then she came back to me, and then she was saying, "What is going on?" And I was just trying to explain her that doctors need to input everything. That's why they were doing it. But she was not happy. That she said, "Okay, doctor did looked into me. She didn't listen it, but because maybe she was whatever the specific time she was targeting to enter data." So, and as you mentioned it, that's how you took our conversation. So how we can, based on as you are educator and working in technology, how we can bridge this gap that doctor don't need to put a lot of keep typing rather than attending the customer or patient.
Well, I can tell you what best practices are today, and then what we really need to do. Because, at the end of the day, I don't know if you know this, but we have about 400 physician suicides on an annual basis. And it's stress, it's burden. And when you think about doctors and nurses, why they went into this business, they go into this business because they fundamentally care about people. And the administrative systems today are keeping them away from the reason they got into it in the first place. And so, we launched electronic health records probably 15 or 20 years ago now, and it made perfect sense at the time. When you put in a new system, you want the experts to make sure that your language and your structure and your workflows are appropriate. And so I sort of understand 20 years ago why we had physicians highly involved in this. But the fact of the matter is, it's supposed to be today, it should be feeding the systems and giving the physician more time with their patient. So best practices, what I see now, is in the case that you were talking about, is where a nurse would come into the room a little bit earlier, or a tech. They'd validate all the information. When the doctor comes in the room, they would actually repeat everything. So the doctor starts out and they're repeating it in front of the patient. So the patient also, sometimes the patient will think of something new, right? They'll say, "Oh yeah, and this," right? And so she'll take care of that. And she'll stay in the room while the doctor does his or her thing and document what needs to be documented. And again, solves the problem of allowing the physician to touch the patient and have a little more communication. It's probably a tad more expensive. The math is really interesting when you work with physicians because physicians can also see more patients in a day. So there's two
Right.
things that in the data, when physicians have a relationship with their patient, the data shows that they receive far less lawsuits than physicians that don't, right? And that's because in the case of your wife, she's like, what just happened? I didn't have anything. I was talking to a gentleman the other day who brought his father in for something with his lungs and his heart, and he said the doctor never touched his father. And so, to your point, we've got to solve that. So I think that's maybe a best practices for today. But I think the future is being able to use technology to be able to have computer systems do this, and also I think executives in hospital systems and ambulatory surgical centers or whoever's running these organizations needs to really take a significant look at working that detail out. So if you go back to the 80s and 90s with just-in-time manufacturing, right, there was this thing called non-value added. And it didn't mean if you were in a non-value added position that you weren't important. It was just making the point that if you weren't touching the product,
Right.
that's the whole goal, touching the product, right? Everyone else is overhead or some sort of support. Well, it's the same thing with our nurses and physicians. And I think we need to take on that attitude that, we have to optimize their time. We have to make things efficient for them. And so hopefully phase 2, we have launched about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It's not in the United States yet, ICD-11, which for your audience is called International Classification for Diseases. And they record everybody's, there's a code for people, when you die, how what you died from, and there's a code for comorbidities. So what's your various diseases, and every time you go in the hospital, we all have them. And so it wasn't how our billing system was meant to be, but we decided many years ago that's how we bridge it. And so what has happened is a group that started working with the electronic health record people called Snowmen, a nonprofit group. Their goal was to take your word and a word in French and all that and be able to tie it. And they've worked with the World Health Organization to make sure that the next generation of code comes out and that's all matched. I think that's a real promise. Now, in the United States, we're probably not due to implement it for several years. We're usually a couple of years behind in doing it. But I think between that and AI and technology all sort of advancing, we're going to have an opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving the context. Now, I will explain you another scenario where I personally observed it. So one physician, he's entering it, and then I got another incident. My younger kid, he got some elbow, I think, break here, and then we went to doctor, the orthopedics. Now he was having an advanced technology, so he listened to us. And then whatever he listened, he took a microphone, like a phone, and then he started speaking. And then it's what a speak to text, like speak
Yes.
to text. So whatever he was listening, then he was speaking in front of us. And then that he was recording into the EHR, right? So now I was being a technology guy, I said, okay, there is a new face now onboarded. So rather than typing, now he's speaking, and then he has more easiness.
Yes.
But is this what only we are doing it, or we see some other futuristic technology improvements in healthcare?
So you will see. Was he speaking into something that looked like that plastic thing in the plane that comes down? You put the ram.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, that's to have clarity. So that's where the advancements in what SNOMED and the ICD-11 are doing today. There's obviously databases that try to do those words, but today, in the future, they'll be connected. So that is an improvement opportunity, and it's not a bad idea, but it's a bit of a scary idea. So and the reason I say that, I just have my annual dermatology visit. They flip you open, they scan for everything, and so she's got a nurse in the room, and she's reading these to her, and then when she said, "You're done, everything looks good," I said, given what you were saying, I thought I was like in stage 4 or something. I mean, the words were very technical and very big. So, that's good, but it doesn't get that point across where the old time doctors, you come in, they put your hand on their shoulder, and as they're talking to you and asking you questions about their life, they're feeling your thyroid, and they're, testing and hearing lots of things, and they're gathering information, they're looking at body language. And as long as you're occupied doing something else, you're not doing that. And so, my primary care physician says, listen, there's so many reasons, valid reasons to do telehealth, but, at least once a year, I need to kind of see you and touch you and feel you and hear your heart and, those kind of things. And so I think we're moving hopefully towards that balance.
Okay. So now if another, I think the typical challenge which we are seeing it in everywhere. Okay, I went into one hospital and then maybe one provider or chain of hospitals, right? Number of services. And then maybe I didn't get a schedule and that hospital is very overloaded. And then I need to get to another one. Now, whatever I have records, that's there. So then I need to, if I go to another one, then it's mean I'm starting from zero. So now they're asking me, where is your blood reports and all that? So now either I need to take a PDF or download, and then I need to take my record. So I started doing it like everything now is on my mobile in my folder. So, okay, these are my personal records rather than maintaining by a different hospitals as unique. So how do you see?
What's up with that? So what's up with that? So we have two very important policies that are sort of fighting each other. So we have one policy called interoperability, and there's a lot of incentives and a lot of, motivation to be in a situation where why can't my iPhone workout schedule and pulse and everything connect to my doctor? And then we have cybersecurity penalties that are extremely hard. We have that a black market healthcare record is materially worth way more than a credit card record. So you can cancel your credit card and get a new credit card, but your social security number is with you for life. And I tell this story. My father had a cat living in New Hampshire and Florida, going back and forth, had a cataract done in one eye and waited a year to go back to get the second cataract done. And they told him he already had it done in Wyoming. And so what it ended up being is an example of someone had lifted his record. They had found out that the left eye wasn't done, and they sold a left eye to someone who went in and obviously committed fraud. But I think what you have is when you're inside of a hospital system, they probably share it among departments. When you're moving out to another organization, interoperability says it should connect, and cybersecurity says it's not a good idea to connect. And I think we're going to sort through those in the coming years for sure.
Okay. So now maybe let's fast forward it, and I'm relating to my question because I was doing 6 months back MSc in artificial intelligence, and then I took one project because being an experience and working with a hospital service provider or a regulator. Was implementing the back office and supporting them, all these integrations and medicines, and even what are the regulators need to done in authority-wise, as a health authority. So I thought, okay, let me do my project final on the data science, and I took the data set from the US birth records. That's a quite famous one. Now, while I was doing this analysis, that was anonymous data was available. And now I was feeling that, okay, if I can do this analysis and I can apply some machine learning, and then if I'm submitting to my university, why or how hospitals, or maybe it cannot be a helping tool to the physicians to do some AI on or machine learning on the patient's data, and then give them some analysis or some report, whatever they are deciding it. So how you're seeing it, these new emerging technologies are going to play a role in primarily in healthcare, which is quite regulated and still old technology living industry.
Sure. So AI in and of itself can be a product. right? So you can sell it as a
Right.
product, like ChatGPT is sold as a product.
Mm.
You can use it to improve your internal processes, and you can
Mm.
use it to make new business models. And so, but that's the technology. So the question is, to
Right.
what end are we going after this? And so I think in the short term, we're applying it towards the administrative side in a more of a free form way, because the failure of that doesn't result in anyone's death or harm. As
Mm.
it relates
Mhm.
to using it in the clinic, we have it in kind of two different places. So we have it in our robotics, and we have it built into sort of our Da Vinci systems and different
Right.
things like that. And those are very validated closed loop systems that get filed to the FDA, very, very rigorous. There's a company that does for spinal infusion. They take a CT scan and they index the patient. So as they move the patient, the plan is always being updated. So you see
Mhm.
that in the surgical suite. But again, they're what I call closed loop systems, meaning that you they were designed to do something very specific. There's lots of data,
Mm.
precise, unbiased data to support it. It's validated with great rigor and provided to the FDA. I think we're a long way off. Some people are sort of saying, "What is this? We're going to have a chat GPT conversation in the OR?" No, we are not going to do that,
Mhm.
at least in the foreseeable future. But I do think what we will see is we call it either AI medicine or precision medicine. And precision medicine is more drug oriented, and AI medicine is not that. And so what I think we'll see is intelligent systems augmenting a doctor. So if you have a primary care physician, for example, who's got 1,200 patients that they see over the course, or maybe even
Right.
thousands over the course, and they find out that maybe someone has the marker to have chronic pancreatitis. So there's a company called Aerial Therapeutics, and
Mhm.
they have a precision medicine model where they've plotted the path. So if you and and I'm just making this up to show how ridiculously important data can be to small things. I have that, you don't have that. You and I come in with a certain rash. For you, slap some cream
Mhm.
on it, it's fine. For me, it means maybe I've advanced someplace. So how
Mhm.
does that doctor know out of the thousands of patients that at this moment this is an important piece of information? And so I think we have systems like
Mhm.
Aerial Therapeutics does this. It says, "Hey, doctor, this is a unique patient, and here's some unique symptoms and protocols, and let me bring it to your attention."
Mhm.
And then that allows the physician to sort of categorize in. So when you think, when a physician sees you, when I talk to my physician friends, they talk about it sort of like an upside down org chart. So they start down with all the managers, right? And they're thinking,
Mhm.
they're triaging you to try to get to some sort of importance in their decision. And so in the case of this precision medicine model, it can help a doctor save time going through that tree and making an
Okay.
appropriate decision. And
Mhm.
then the benefit to maybe drug companies are, if you have, say, point A, B, C, D, F, G in this disease pathway, over time, interacting with data, we may find that there's something between point A and point B. Now,
Mhm.
scientists and physicians, the computers can say we have something going on here that requires attention, but it takes a scientist and a physician and a drug company to decide what to do with it. And so then I think we'll feed that back in, and we might have drugs to treat things that we never treated before because there wasn't any evidence or data for drug companies to make the investment. So I think it's going to sort of go in that direction.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned ChatGPT and AI, and then you also said it's just not going to happen quickly, and the reason behind, because it's just humans. It's not that we are doing any some procurement or which is some HR functions or something, and
Well, we
that's
also can't trust the data sets yet. They're not,
Mhm.
if you take our high school, statistics, right? We've got the tail of the distribution is where all this sort of cool, odd stuff is. And
Right.
if you think of, the top cancer centers in the country, the Mayo Clinics, and you think of the heart centers, really what their expertise is they're saying such volume of patients, difficult cases, all the weird stuff that maybe a country doctor might see once every 10
Mhm.
years, they see on a regular basis, right? And so I think the promise is when we get comprehensive data structures that are unbiased. So we have, minority bias, male, female bias. We have all sorts of bias just simply because our data sets are too small at this point in time. Weren't originally designed to take that bias out. But when we get there, I think it's going to be a great opportunity to spread the knowledge into areas that aren't centers of excellence, and they can still get information like they are a center of excellence.
Okay. So now I think the common question, if someone listening from the audience and who is working in healthcare sector, now his priority are maybe as now these large language models or generative AI hype is at the peak, and he or she may be also being in IT arm of the hospital or maybe a clinic or something. It's becoming a binding to them that, okay, I need to do something in AI. Right, it's like a pressure night right now for on everyone whoever work in IT industry, that I need to find a use case. Maybe he's a retailer, or maybe he's an FSI, or maybe he's in a public sector, whatever. So what are your suggestions to him or her, keeping in healthcare industry as in mind?
Sure. So I think probably it's really about understanding what I would call the digital health system, and how things come together, and what is the definition of generative AI versus general AI and machine language. It's a time of educating ourselves on what these tools are, because it's sort of like anything in the consulting world. You started out with AI being, anything that can behave like a human, and then you move to machine learning,
Right.
and deep learning. So what do those definitions mean, and how do we apply them? And so I think it's just a time to educate. Now, ironically, a lot of physicians I know have a bias towards systems or a bias towards engineering. And ironically, they're both the same mindset anyways. But I think what will happen is people will develop tools, and they'll also educate people. So, for example, when a drug or a medical device is launched, there's an education of the medical community. I think what's going to happen is these companies that are offering AI into institutions are also going to have to take responsibility.
So it's mean, if I take it, especially the healthcare industry, they need to be conscious when they are taking AI or whatever you name it, compared to other industries, to either implement or accept it in the wider.
That's a really good point, because when you and I are playing with ChatGPT, if we get a bad answer, there's no consequence to that, right? So that's why I think, as I said earlier, it's going to be a lot of administrative side where the consequences aren't. And then I think there's a very fine line, by definition, with the FDA on decision support and therapeutic recommendation. And I think the line in the foreseeable future is going to be decision support, and the medical people, the physicians specifically, will use the judgment, whether that's good or bad information, to them to be able to make a therapeutic recommendation. I think in 50 years, we can be at the point where there's some. I don't think we'll ever be able to let go of the final judgment. The physician has to do the final judgment. But I think, as in the case of the precision medicine model I discussed earlier, I think that, that's well validated, and the physician can be very comfortable, listening to the recommendation and then supporting it. Whereas today, I think it's more, thank you for your input. I will make a decision, because there's multiple things that they're factoring in. Our artificial intelligence systems are not going to give the physician the holistic thing that they're thinking about as they're going through their head. They're thinking of lifestyle, family, support, different things like that. And so we just don't have all that information in our systems today to really have physicians trust that yet.
All right. So maybe I will link the question to, as at the opening remarks, you said you're working even in a consultative approach, and where the data, based on a lot of data. What are your predictions or recommendations, or they can use this data to improve the quality of healthcare system. And being you're expert in that industry.
So I think I'm going to sound like a nerd here for a minute, so I will apologize in advance. But when you think of manufacturing systems, I'm making any product.
Right.
I have a fixed input. My supply is, the specs are really tight. I put them through a fixed process to get a fixed output. But healthcare by its nature is variable input. Patient comes in, yes, your heart disease, different from my heart disease. There's 10 different comorbidities, so it's variable. And then we have to apply a variable process to get a fixed standard output, right? That would be our goal. And so in doing that, I picked up a book that I found at a yard sale, like from 1950s. I lost it in one of my moves, but it was one of those just gems where it was one of the first people in information management talking about any system has planning, flow, deviation, and variability issues. That's it, right? And so, where you were talking about moving to the next department and your data didn't arrive before you, right? That's either a planning or a flow issue. Then you have deviation, like things just went bad, right? You screwed up. But systems can help us chase those down. And if we really get it right, then we're just working on variability. So what we're trying to do is, remember when you go to the carnival, you've got the whack-a-mole game, that's coming up in an unpredictable fashion. Well, what we're trying to do is have our systems whack those moles down and get a predictive pattern, right? That would be the natural variability. So I think hospital systems, these are quality techniques that with or without computers can be advanced. They certainly will be more advanced with computers. But I think that's what we're moving towards in general in healthcare is having our quality systems in there and applying these technologies to help us, whack those moles.
Right. So what could be your thoughts? I'm just not naming them prediction, but your thoughts on where we're heading from a healthcare point of view.
So I think my dean always says that technology moves faster than the laws and regulations that support it, right? And I think one of the examples that we are all familiar with is the Tesla car was supposed to be totally automated by now. Uber was automated until it hit somebody and then it paused for a few years.
Right.
And we found out that eventually it was the pedestrian's issue, not the technology issue. But when those things happen, things stop. I think we're going to see a lot of stops and starts in healthcare, specifically as it relates to that. We're going to think, and the other piece is there's a vision for a real-time healthcare system where we sort of understand everything that's going on outside the system and inside the system. So, for example, a lot of physicians will say that 65% of the information that they need is outside of the acute setting, right? It's on your phone, it's your heart rate variability, it's your exercise, and they need access to that information. So I think we're going to have situations where we're attempting to do that, and then someone's going to break in there, and there's going to be an issue, and we're going to pause, and we're going to look at the standards. So I think there's going to be a lot of starts and stops, but the low fruit right now, I think, is on the administrator side.
Okay. So maybe towards our concluding of the session, and you mentioned when we started the conversation on the cyber security point, and which is important and very critical. I mean, even the financial sectors or the banks or all they are maybe at the prime of doing a lot of practices or procedures implementing. So how you see the healthcare sector, and you have also given your father's one example.
So Heinz College has one of the top 1 or 2 master's programs in cybersecurity in the U.S. And so I nerd out with those guys, and you think a lot of times the solutions are very technical, but sometimes they're very basic, just operations management. When you sort of see information moving in and out of your organization, it is a gigabyte per minute, and all of a sudden a terabyte for 5 minutes, you what do you do about it? Well, you can sit there and talk about, all these things. You can sit there and pull the cord, right? So there's basic solutions that are in there. But I think artificial intelligence actually has an opportunity to help here too, because a lot of the way people get in are through emails to the employees and people being busy, right? And it looks familiar. And I'm sure, with your background, you've had moments where you've looked at some phishing thing and say, wow, that's really good. That's really
True.
good. And so I think AI can help sort of handle some of that. But a lot of the, I'm not going to remember the number off the top of my head. I have it somewhere, but it's a pretty significant number of people getting in there are basically coming in through the employees. And because, if you look at like the big venture capital firms in the banking industry, if you've ever gone to the JP Morgan meeting, everyone's walking around with 2 phones. And those companies will not allow their employees, their phones that are sealed for company business and there's no infiltration. Well, the average other business, I've got my Outlook and my personal Gmail on here, right? And so there's an opportunity to get in through the system through my phone. And that's a really significant weakness. And so can AI and other things, apps help, with that? So I have, for example, when I travel, I have a VPN I use on my phone. But I also have systems that will scan my passwords and basically tell me if anything's been in the black market to change my password. I use 1Password personally. So I think these things are very helpful tools to thwart that. But I had a friend doing a medical device incubator. I came out of a medical device company, came out of an incubator, and 30 plus companies in that incubator got contaminated. So someone broke in. So the promise of the incubator is we'll standardize your human resource, your accounting systems, everything, right? And you get to walk away with that as part of our investment. So it makes perfect sense for any startup company. It's like, this is a lot of work that can be taken care of. Someone got into that system, and in the case of my friend, he caught them after they had gotten $40,000, whereas other companies. So these people had waited till the class graduated, and they went out and raised their first capital. And then they went in and they started taking the CFO's email and finding out who the accounts payable clerk was. And they were hijacking the CFOs in here, changing the date and getting okay to pay. And so, I mean, that's how it happens, right? Just an infiltration into some place that we hadn't considered.
All right. Got it. So now maybe one question from 5G, and everywhere 5G is coming, is there, and then in the movies, doctors will be able to do the remote operations through the medical devices. So where we are heading? Are we heading towards this?
So, some of our companies today, like, the Da Vinci robot and things like that, were actually designed for that. So there is some of that going on today, and some of that's been going on for a while. I think it's the sort of bridge between telemedicine and finding remote facilities. So there's a great University of Pittsburgh Medical Center story here where it was the paper. It was an 82-year-old couple. He had cancer, and they would have to drive, 2+ hours into the city for their follow-up appointments. So that's 2 hours in, 2 hours back. Probably spend the day. And for someone at that age, it was just exhausting. And they would talk about how he was more drained from that at his age than it was from the treatment. And so what they did is they started putting up these remote centers that they could put a nurse in the equipment, so they could get something better than, a telehealth visit, like maybe on the screen, but they could actually get blood pressure and blood samples and different things like that, and save these people from traveling. So I think we're going to see more of that. And as of recently, I haven't been able to validate the business model yet, but people are talking about this concept of healthcare at home, where actually they're discovering, it might be cheaper to send people to your house and take care of some of these basic things. So I see people experimenting with it. I haven't seen them, I haven't seen anyone turn it into a scale and profit yet, but I can imagine that, these things will bring back wrapping up what we started, right? This will bring back the personal nature, because I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother still had the doctor visiting her home.
Yeah, true.
So I think, ironically, in our lifetime, you and I can see that loop close again. It'd just be done in a very different way.
different way, right? Very, very. The example you gave it very well. And maybe a last question. You mentioned the startups, and as you are venture capitalist and you're working in that area, so how you see the startup space especially in healthcare industry?
So it's in different segments. I'd be excited about different segments. So, if you go back 5 years ago, healthcare IT as a general topic was lots of startups,
Right.
and a very good place to be because for reasonable investment, you can get to sales. That's starting to be a little more challenging for people that are connecting into the electronic health record because, we've now got 3 to 7 major electronic health record companies that let you into differing degrees. So that's becoming a little bit more difficult, but now the AI and the office efficiency things have scaled. I mean, there's a company called Fraser that I think that, if you went back a decade ago, they'd be a little bitty startup. Now they're a publicly traded company doing really good things. But it's all on, texting and office efficiency and different things like that. So I think that space is very exciting. In the diagnostic space, I think because of COVID, we get used to taking testing at home. And so, I noticed the other day, 23andMe, which I've been part of for a long time, a customer, they said, hey, pay this much per month, and we'll keep you updated on your information from the one blood sample that they collected many years ago. So I think that these models are kind of interesting and going to come together. I think molecular diagnostics is a tough place to be right now because the reimbursement isn't really there, so it's hard to be a startup. And ironically, if you talked to me 15 years ago, I'd say pharmaceutical startup, you're crazy. Today, I think they're great. I think big pharmaceutical companies are recognizing that they would rather buy a company and cheer for the startup. It's just statistically in their interest to do so. So that's a very exciting space. And I think medical devices have been kind of slow since 2008 because it was a big roll up, but I think that's about to open up again because big companies now can't develop it organically inside. They're just too big. So I think that's going to open up too. So it's an exciting time, and services are being very creative. There's a lot of transportation services, and you think of waste and food. So it's not always like the really complex stuff that people are doing. And I again, those systems are oriented towards those quality initiatives that we were talking about. Think about it. They're coming up with ways for planning flow and deviation resolution, right? And so, very exciting time.
Thank you so much for joining the Open Tech Talks.tv, and I loved it, the discussion, and even we are already almost 40 minutes, and we keep talking, but I think we need to honor the time span.
Perfect.
So maybe concluding remarks, and someone want to reach out to you, where someone should be approaching you, or some personal website or blog.
Sure. So again, my academic website is called healthcaredata.center. My personal website is jfjordan.com. And I do both management consulting and I do executive coaching is what I do mostly.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining the show.
At otechtalks.tv, it's a turf to share ideas, insights, and innovations.